Welcome to another edition of Keeping Orange and Blue. I'm Ryan Evan, joined as always by Kevin Ducey. What's up, Kev?
What's up, Ryan, my man? How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. I'm good. I think pretty good weekend overall. Not just because Illinois and beat Kansas, and we got to see how good the Illini basketball team could end up possibly being. But yeah, just overall a good weekend. A nice bye week for the football team, so there wasn't too much, nerve, stress, and nail biting going on with that. They definitely needed a bye week. So, how was your weekend, man? How'd you end up doing in Orlando or golfing?
Yeah, it was good. It was a good trip. It was pretty fun. We played a boatload of golf, but happy to be home. Went from 80 something in Orlando to 33 and rainy in Oklahoma City. So got me. If I'm a little hoarse, it's got me a little bit under the weather, but I'm all good, man. And you know, uh, yeah, I agree with everything you said. It was a bye week that was much needed. It's a game coming into this week that the football team can win, and we'll really dive into that in a little bit. But we've got actual between the lines stuff. It's probably the first time you and I would spend some time talking about an exhibition game like this, maybe other than Brad Underwood's first one against Eastern when we lost, right?
Yep.
Uh, it was
I
it was
live
impressive.
streamed that. I live streamed that game from from the bleachers. I don't know if you remember that.
I do. I watched some of it. I forgot what was that platform called? You used to be able to do that
It's
through
Periscope, yeah.
Periscope. Yeah.
And I remember how people were complaining because that was as good as seats as I had to live stream it. Yeah, nobody could watch it though, but they were complaining that it was a mediocre view. But that tis the world, right?
Yeah. So, man, I know you and I talked briefly offline about this on what you saw, and I'll reiterate it. Like, I think one of the key things for this team, and I've talked about it. I put it on Twitter. I put it in multiple forums. Is how old this team is, and we saw it. The last 3 minutes and 44 seconds of the game, Illinois ran out a lineup of Damask, Harmon, Guerriere, Shannon, and Hawkins. That's one traditional fourth year senior and four fifth year seniors. So you have guys, and when you got Harmon, let's talk about Harmon and Damask. Two transfers there. Let's talk about Harmon, Damask, and Guerriere. Those guys have been starting in college basketball for 4 straight seasons. Now, granted, Harmon did 2 of those years in junior college, but that's still just such seasoned guys. And I think you saw so much of that in that game last night. We saw a team that was patient. We saw a team that made some mistakes, but didn't get down on themselves. They seem to never lose their composure. And they also seem like they really like each other. They seem like they really gelled. I remember, it's such a different exhibition game when you got fans who are paying good money to go and for the Maui event, and it's televised. Just things that just haven't happened in the past. We played Kansas last year. Nobody saw any video of it. And maybe caught some clips or some highlights, shooting video like you did with Periscope, but not from a fan perspective. And so there's just a lot more into this. And so in a traditional exhibition situation or a secret scrimmage, you'd expect to see a lot more run for guys like Nico Moretti, Amani Hansberry, and DGL. And Draven, I was a little bit worried about him because he didn't get a lot of running and a lot of tick. But we made a big shot late, and they called a timeout, and he was the first guy to run off the bench. And so, I know there's a lot of people.
My bad. I'm going to post this middle. Look at
that. Yep. Hawkins, the youngest guy in the lineup. Yep. Well, with that peach fuzz mustache,
I just and I love the what's the Orphan Andy curls he's got. Those are sweet. But yeah, he's to finish. I'll just finish your point because I got a lot to say too. Go for it.
So I was worried about how those guys would react, but I'll tell you this: in the time that they did play, I mean, you see Hansberry's energy. You saw what he could do. Moretti was fine when he was in. DGL was out there. You could see his explosiveness and his ability. But I know a lot of people are down on Goody and Dane and Sincere Harris didn't get a lot of run, but when he gets run, those guys are gonna have to make the most of it. So when you get in the ball game with the team that's got this much depth and this much experience, dude, there's no time for half-assing it. There's no time. Like, you got to go so hard. And I imagine these guys go so hard in practice. I think this could be a really, really good basketball team. I'm a little bullish on them, man. I really am.
Yeah. And so what to just jump on quite a bit of what you said. What I noticed too was, DeMosk helped bring the ball up. I mean, when Ty Rodgers, you can tell who's going to be a guy that's going to help bring the ball up, and they're not going to Ty Rodgers to do it for 30 minutes. He's going to get some help. I think Dre Gibbs Lawhorn's capable. You only saw him play one time yesterday, so
Right.
that goes to show you that we've got really good depth, and the fact that Justin Harmon's going to handle the ball some if he needs to. DeMosk's going to handle the ball when he needs to. I love just seeing that, even without Goody having really a good game, he kind of was just a guy out there yesterday, He was just a guy out there, which says a lot because remember, before at the end of last year, we probably thought, oh, he's going to be the starter and he's going to be counted on for heavy minutes and he's got to show up. He's got to rebound. He's got to be hitting shots for the team to be good. Well, you saw how much Marcus DeMoss can mean to this team, I told you earlier privately, but I had mentioned obviously on the show when we had him on here that I said that people are going to love his game. I said, I wouldn't surprise me if he starts. I think he showed you his mid-range game. He showed you there's no moment too big for him. And honestly, when he misses guys, it always goes in the hoop and comes out, doesn't it? He had 2 threes that they toilet bowled out. So his shots are online. His free throws look good. He's tough around the rim. They had him on McCullough, and don't get me wrong, McCullough got his, but DeMoss wasn't afraid to get in there and put his body on him and, go get his as well. So love to see that. But and Quincy Guerrero was huge in the game.
Huge.
He wasn't afraid to attack the basket. He wasn't afraid to get fouled. He had to make it. And he made his free throws. I think he made 5 of 6 in the last 5 minutes of the game. He had that big 3 when the game was tied. Loved what we saw from him. So, I mean, that's just excites me because, not just having old guys, but having guys that can take care of the ball and can hit their free throws. And then seeing Harmon with a couple really big plays. Defensively, he got caught a couple crossovers, and there was no help defense.
I think that's just experience of playing together and a little bit of miscommunication, though, looking back on it, because the guy's known as a really fierce defender and really, I mean, he cares about playing defense. I don't think that I think that was just a miscommunication, something they'll clean up.
Because it looked like Shannon was just completely lost on the play. I think they mentioned that he was the backside help on that, and he wasn't even anywhere near. But yeah, Harmon had a big reverse layup. He went and attacked Hunter Dickinson. Fearless too. Had a big cut. Remember in the end of the second half, he had a huge cut where Coleman Hawkins found him, crashed into the basket to help extend the lead. I think the team's cutting a lot better. I think they're passing the ball really well. I think there was one play where they hit 5 straight passes within like 3 seconds, and then down to wide open DeMoss.
That's going to drain it. Yep.
Yeah, they extended the lead. So you'd love to see that. And I don't care what anybody says. Oh, Kansas didn't worry about it. It's just an exhibition. It was just an exhibition for both of the teams. Okay, and Bill Self was on Kansas to quit being lazy, stop fouling, go out there and defend. Hunter Dickinson wanted to win this game. Let's be honest.
Kevin McCullough wanted to win that game too. I mean, he's playing against his old teammate. The guys were buds. They were going at it. They were
chirping. They were like, hey, I'm the man. I'm alpha here. I love to see it. And then honestly, after seeing that, I'm a whole lot more excited about the start of the year than I was the last few years, just because football been in full swing, and I know there's a bowl game that can be still had here, but I'm excited to see, what this team can be, because they've got a huge matchup with Marquette coming in a couple weeks. So
it's like 2 weeks from tomorrow or something like that.
It's a third game of the year. They got number 5 Marquette coming, but they're already ready to me. I don't think Marquette is going to be a higher level than Kansas. If anything, it's going to be pretty close. But
they got some players. They're tough.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that they're not a step above Kansas. I think, the level is going to be pretty similar. So they've already got that under their belt. But other than that, Sincere Harris is going to have a role on the team. And his role is going to be to dog and shut down the other team's best guy for about 10 minutes a night. It's just give him a good 10 minutes of hounding, hustling. Give them 4 fouls if you need, because that's what Sincere Harris's role is going to be this year. They don't need him to handle the ball. They don't need him playing 20 minutes a game, taking 15 shots, 10 shots. They don't need that this year.
No,
they need him to play tough.
Energy and defense.
Yep, energy and defense. And then we got to see Amani Hansberry, who was battling against Hunter Dickinson for a little bit. And so a couple of the negatives, and you can maybe say some negatives you had, but I really want to see Dane Danger get some confidence shooting free throws. And I know it's early, but he just looked like the same guy from last year. At some point, you can't just work on your game. Eventually, you just got to translate. So I'm not going to sit here and, bitch him out right away, but I want to see that improvement, because there was a lot of flat, just line drive balls being thrown up there at that rim. And,
that was frustrating. No, that's frustrating. I agree with you there completely. Yeah.
Because it's like, there's no way in heck anyone who's ever coached him has told him and went over with him on free throws, just throw it up there. It's just like his mind mentally, he's just wasn't there at the line. But with that said, Ty Rogers' balls looked a little bit better. He made his first one. The second one just rimmed out on him. But it's all about that release. It's all about confidence. And I think that's where it's got to start. So I'll let you take over from there. Kev, anything else you noticed that you say, man, I think this is something they need to get right as Marquette approaches?
Yeah, I think the half-court offense at times was not exactly right. And it was one of those things that it's a little – I wouldn't say worrisome, because I just think there's so many other pieces on this team. But, you go back to the big wins that the team had last year, and obviously the UCLA and Texas games pushed us into an NCAA tournament where we faltered down the stretch in the Big Ten play. And a lot of it was due to point guard play. And a lot of it was we needed somebody to have a hot hand. And we had it yesterday. I mean, Terrence was hot from 3, and it really opened it up. And we know he can be streaky. We know that. He's put in the work. And I mean, if he could shoot 35, 38% this year, that would be it would change the entire dynamic of the season. Coleman shot the ball much better yesterday. I've always said, he's a rhythm. If he just allows, I think when he takes too much time is when he's bad. And so he was good there. So the concern is what if those two guys aren't hitting? But like I said, I think we have other guys in the process that can happen, because we don't really have right now a point guard on the team that we're confident in that can go and basically break down a defense to get things happening. You saw that. Why can't I think of their name? That they're fantastic point guard. He did that. Yeah, what's that?
DeJuan Harris.
DeJuan Harris, yeah. I've been a big fan. I like the kid's game. Can imagine what he would be a perfect fit on this team. But we would need that point guard that could really break down and break down the defense and get things rolling. I think Ty Rogers certainly can be that guy, but he's going to have to use his size as opposed to just his quickness. And we had some sloppy turnovers. We had some sloppy turnovers last year. And, I don't know if 27 threes is too many. Certainly isn't too many if you make 11. But, I don't want us to be a completely reliant three-point shooting team, because I think we're I think this team has a chance to be such a good offensive rebounding team that, it'll give you some opportunities for some long ones. But I really like this. I want this team to get shots at the rim. And we're big and we're physical, and I want more shots at the rim. That being said, Bill Self is always been known for a couple things. He draws up some great sets, especially out of timeouts, and we saw it yesterday. Robbie Hummel talked about it over and over again. But Bill Self's teams guard, and that Kansas team guards. Kevin McCullough, DeJuan Harris are phenomenal perimeter defenders. Hunter Dickinson, while he's never been a great defender, is a solid defender. KJ Adams is a fantastic defender. So I'll walk away from this. I think Illinois is better than what we expected. I think Kansas is overrated as the number 1 team in the country. So
I think Kansas is probably a top 10-ish team.
Yeah,
just because they have really good experience, and you can't discredit 3 All-American type players. And one of those guys on that team is probably going to be the Big 12 Player of the Year. And Hunter Dickinson, as much as we dislike him about certain things, he's a hell of a player. I mean, I'm never going to be some sort of dude that's just going to hate on somebody and disrespect their game. But hell of a player.
I like him. I don't give a shit what anybody says. I like the fact he doesn't care if you hate him, dude.
And the fact he's going to be 0-5 against Illinois probably for the rest of his life, and he's still going to keep his head up and start and keep being a pesky, twerp and talk shit. I mean, that takes some balls, man. But I don't think he'll be shit talking Illinois ever again. I mean,
probably not.
It's kind of hard to do that when you've lost 5 and never won. But that said, the Coleman Hawkins and Terrence Shannon show. I think it's consistency for their shooting. No one's expecting Terrence Shannon to hit 6 threes a game. I mean, I think if he hits 2 or 3 a game, and that's consistent, we'd all love that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And Coleman Hawkins give you a couple a game if he takes 5 or 6. We're cool with that, And if you shoot 10, you hit 3 or 4 of them. So I think what we saw yesterday, hopefully that's more of a trend. But as I mentioned here, the word of the day for Illinois basketball just has to be depth.
100%.
So deep. I think you could go 9 and 10 comfortably and feel like these guys can handle it. And Harris could be your 9th guy, and even DGL and Hansberry, again, whoever you need for some minutes to give you 5 or 10 a game. I think that's going to be quality, and I think that's where Illinois, can outlast some teams like Kansas, who have 7, 8 guys, But so
well, and you think about what's going to happen in the grind of the Big Ten season. We know it. We've seen it over and over again. What happens is foul trouble is going to happen. Injuries will happen. Fatigue will happen, and we have the ability, when you have 12 guys that you look at and you like, it's not necessarily that. Like, we got 12 guys that we know can come in and start. And I don't know that that's the case, but we got 12 guys can play basketball at this level.
Yeah.
12 guys that, just aren't. Amani Hansberry and DGL are like 10 and 11, and Moretti in there. Like, they're not fazed by this. Moretti played professional ball. Not professional.
Yeah, but he plays like on the national team. He plays he's played against NBA players already,
Right.
So.
And DGL was on our show. He talked about how, playing at overtime elite, he's playing with guys who are in the league now. Like, he's not they're not fazed by this. And Amani Hansberry, all you need to do to see his 3 minutes there is like, dude, he's not fazed by this. So, like, those guys are gonna be needed at points in time this season. And if they're the opportunity to say, hey, Terrence Shannon, you might not have to play 30 minutes a game most games. Coleman Hawkins, you're probably not going to need to play 30 minutes. Like, we shouldn't really have anybody that averages 30 minutes a game. It keeps guys fresh, man. It keeps their legs fresh, keeps them ready for the long haul of the season. And this could be the antithesis of what we've seen. Like, 2 years ago, the team was held together with duct tape going into the tournament when we got our brains beaten by Houston. Last year, it was like we were running on fumes and then ran into a good Arkansas team to start. So it was just like, you could clearly see the team was not on the right trajectory towards the right part of the season. The only team that we've really had that was really ascending at the right time in the Underwood era, other than the 1 seed, and I hate to even talk about it, was that team that lost the season because of COVID. That team seemed to be like, all right, now we're finding our stride. I think this team could be more like that team. That team is a little bit older. That team had some dudes. I think this team can be like that team and really be ascending and do what our guy SDR is asking for. St. Dominic's Rosary is the Sweet 16, and I think it can happen.
This team, I think, definitely could be the team that gets there. And as the next thing I want to focus, I think, will be the biggest issue the team will face, I think, is the minutes being shared and how are they going to be used. I think Brad has to come up with that solution. And while I don't think that's a huge issue, I think that that's a good thing, that this probably will be the biggest issue.
Well, and that's where you're going to have to get what I would call mob mentality or majority stakeholders. And I think the majority stakeholders on this team are so old and seasoned that they'll be able to keep those guys' heads on straight. This is a team that is going to be led by those guys we've already talked about, the guys that were on the floor. And those guys want to do something special with their last year. And So you got those 5 older guys. Dane's an older guy. Luke's in his 3rd year in the program. Luke is not a me first guy, dude. He's about let's find a way to win. Sincere Harris is not a me first guy. He's a team guy. He is, and I think that mentality, if you're going to be a little bit of that outlier, you're going to be such a gross minority that you're not going to be able to act that way, or you're just going to leave. And I don't want any of the guys to leave, but if we had 11 guys instead of 12, I think we'll be just fine. Whereas last year, you had me first and Sky Clark. You had me first and Jaden Epps. You had Pouty RJ Melendez. You had me first Matt Meyer. There was just too much. And you had Terrence Shannon Jr., who's new to the team. You had Coleman Hawkins, who just wasn't really – like it was his first year being a leader. He'd been led by Trent and Kofi and those guys. Like this was – and DeMonte. Like there's just more seasoning for that. I don't see that same garbage happening again where guys are really bitching about their minutes.
I think the fact that Ty Rodgers went on, publicly and mentioned that, they weren't all on the same page last year was just a big, that's just not something I know that Brad and the staff's cool with that getting out. But I think it was just that bad that they were like, listen, it's okay if some of this comes out. And I know there was a lot worse things behind the scenes going on too, that we won't mention on here, but it was just chemistry was really bad last year, and that's not going to be an issue this year. So with that said, let's talk about briefly here for a little bit before we transition to football. We've only been on 22 minutes. We still got another probably 20 minutes or so about some of our old favorite Illini got to come back, celebrate Bill Self a little, got to come, bring their children, got to sit with their children, got to introduce them to Bill. He took pictures with them, just some of those amazing teams that he had. And, Kevin, I think maybe the Flying Illini may have been like, those were your guys for you. I just want to give you an example. That was your team, right? Well, those two, between 98 and 2002, 2003, even though it was Lon Kruger, won the Big Ten with Brian Johnson and Heldman and all those guys, like that's when I was really like I was 10, 11 years old, and I'm like impressionable, and I'm playing myself. I'm learning to play. And then here comes Bill Self from Tulsa, who just got his team to the Elite Eight. And I'm like, oh, man, I was upset when Lon Kruger took the Atlanta Hawks job. Like I cried, man. Like I was like, what is he doing? I was like, why would he leave to go to the Hawks? They're terrible. And they were terrible when he was on there. He was their coach, and I was like, we got things rolling. We got Frankie, we got Corey Bradford, like my favorite 3-point shooter. I loved Corey Bradford.
Same.
Cookie, Brian Cook was the man, dude. I mean, Brian Cook, a local Lincoln guy, I wish he would have been able to be back. I think he plays or I don't plays anymore, but I think he lives in Japan or something like that. But Brian Cook, so fun, so amazing. And Lucas Johnson was just that glue guy that, you just loved. And the other team hated him, Like, you remember those Lute Olson matchups where he's like, he's crazy, Like, I just was –
played him 3 times one season. 3 times in a single season.
3 times, man. That 2001 where they lost in overtime in Maui, where Frank Williams, as I mentioned, my favorite player ever.
Put him on his back. Put him on his back in that game.
Boom. He spotted, I think, Jason Garden. Yeah. And just Frank Williams, though, I'm so happy he's got his life back together. But, man, in college, dude, number 30, talent-wise, the dude's just special. Like I mentioned today, I wore number 30 at MacArthur because of Frank Williams. The Seton Hall game, Bill Self mentions in his press conference, they came back down from 21. And Frank Williams helped them bring them back in that second half. Literally, this is college ball. I mean, I think the replay is on YouTube. He goes up with his right hand, and Samuel Dallenberg, by the way, who NBA, Eddie Griffin, rest in peace, NBA.
Yeah.
And they had another NBA ball handler on their team.
They were tough,
yeah. Up in the air like Jordan with his right hand. Guess what? They're all coming to swat. In midair, Frankie puts it in his left and finishes around them with his left hand of a 10-footer. I'm just saying that, like, that's just stuff that can't teach that, And so Frankie Williams and those 3 years of Bill Self's teams had me hooked, man. I was just like, these are my teams. I also cried when they lost to Arizona in the Elite Eight in 2001 when I was 14. I just thought they had it. I'm like, this is going to be the first Final Four since I was 2, and I missed that one, and I was so heartbroken about it. So what were some of your memories of that Bill Self team? And I think you were just getting out of the military, or you were still in the military, or
yeah, a little bit of overlap, and it was one of those things that you come out when I was a kid, when I was a little guy. Like we had a great run of dominance. I mean, we were a top 4 seed every year. We were fighting for Big Ten titles. We had guys we were putting in the NBA year after year. Go from 83 to 90. We get in trouble, and we have some of those down years between like 90 to 96, and then we get Kruger when Henson's gone, and Kruger's first team was not, it was okay. And there's like 98 team that they stormed back and found their way in the Big Ten championship game for Corey Bradford's freshman year, and that ended up leading to a team that won the Big Ten title there. That surprised everybody. That team nobody saw coming when Kevin Turner led the team in scoring. But that was the year before that. But it was just like that was when Lon took over, and then the progression into Self, like 97 to 06 was such a good run. That mirrored a little bit of the 83 to 90, though, and it was just. That's where I thought Illinois basketball was always going to be, and so I don't hate Bill Self. I never have. I don't blame, and I didn't hate Kruger either, because it's not like they left Illinois to go coach Iowa. It's not like they left Illinois to coach Purdue. They left Illinois for, Kansas is a top 4 job in college basketball. Duke, Carolina, Kentucky, Kansas, right? And the NBA is the NBA. And I've had the pleasure of meeting both Lon and Bill, and both first-class gentlemen. Bill's great. Like, anybody ever met that dude? But I'm with you, like, special. And I remember watching that game. I was in the Army of the Seton Hall game. I was watching it with my buddy Lindy Lushin at his place and his barracks room. And, like, we grew up together, and we were stationed at Fort Drum together. And Corey Bradford finally hit a 3 in overtime to extend the streak. Yep. We were worried about that. It's just some great memories there. And I think, like Bill said, 15 years is enough time that 15 plus years, or however, well, shoot, it's been 20 years basically.
The emotions for him, it's just so far gone. He's won 2 national titles with Kansas.
Yep.
But again,
I want to. Can I share one Bill Self story?
Oh yeah.
All right, so it's the 02-03 team. So Brian Cook's senior year averages 20 and almost 10.
That was the year they lost to Notre Dame in the second round.
Yeah, Notre Dame caught fire from 3. Mike Bray. And I went some buddies of mine, we went up to watch Illinois play Michigan at Chrysler. Illinois ended up winning the game. It was a great game. LaBelle Blanchard I think he had like 30. He was balling out. But dude, Brian Cook did something. We're like 7 rows behind the Illini bench because it was Michigan spring break, so we're able to do that. And I've never seen somebody get their ass chewed the way Bill Self jumped in Brian Cook's ass in that game, dude. Early in the game, and then Brian Cook ended up having he had 28 and 13. He had a phenomenal game. It was funny. It was just an interesting experience to see that. But I'm with you. It was really good. It was a really great experience. We know we're not going to get home and homes with Kansas. It's just not something that's probably going to get put on the schedule. But it's pretty cool we could bring Bill back here. Being gone for 20 years now, and it's a good thing. And the fans have lost a little bit of their vitriol towards him, and they directed it at Hunter. So, albeit, man, it was a fun night. It was a really enjoyable experience, because it was one of those things like I really, really wanted us to win.
Yeah.
And we held the lead. Harmon hit the 3 to go up 19-18, and we didn't give it back. It got tied at 70. I know that was
Illinois led pretty much wire to wire. I mean, think about that.
But so it was just a really fun experience. Just watch a basketball game, hope we win. If we lose, it's no big deal. There's nothing coming off. And it was just and doing it for the right reasons. It was a great fan watching experience.
And anybody watching, please feel free to chime in about some of your favorite moments and memories when Bill Self. I love reminiscing, talking Illini sports and history. I could probably do it all day if somebody would let me. But
but you talk about depth, and we're talking about Bill Self. This might be the deepest team since his first team.
Yeah.
And that team went to the Elite Eight. That was the team that lost to Arizona. But that team had Marcus Griffin, Frank Williams, Sergio McClain, Brian Cook,
Demir
Corey
Kripal.
Bradford, Demir Kripal, Robert Archibald, Sean Harrington. That team was so loaded from a depth standpoint.
Yeah.
And they were old too. So this team, while it doesn't, I don't think it has anybody. I mean, Terrence may have a better statistical season than Frank. They might not have the same. It might be a little bit, but that's the closest I can think of from a depth and age standpoint coming in the season.
But for anyone young, like I said, anyone under 25 doesn't know Frank Williams could control a game. I'm just control.
Dude, he could be sitting there with like 5 points with 4 minutes to go, and all of a sudden it's a tight game, and he ends up with 22, and you're like, what? He just he did it against Missouri.
Yeah,
he was Big Game Frank. Like that's why we called him Big Game Frank.
Go look at YouTube Frank Williams highlights, and you might almost be like, he played for Illinois if you've never seen him. You're like, yeah, like in the first round of 2001, they were beating up on Northwestern State. He threw himself an alley-oop, on a fast break. I mean, come on, man. Like, I just was like, this dude is like amazing, you know?
Or the 30 seconds at Iowa where he just like flipped the script. And you talked about it already, the Arizona game. We were getting drubbed, and he just comes back. He dropped 30 on Kansas in the Sweet 16.
He made Kirk Heinrich look like a chump.
Yeah, dude, like he was nice.
And even though his NBA career, Kirk Heinrich had a way better, way longer one. I know for a fact if he didn't have some of the demons he had, as everyone has issues. If he played 3 years, he played 2 for the Knicks. He was their starting point guard for a year or two. And then he played his final year with the Chicago Bulls, and him and Kirk Heinrich were actually teammates. But yeah, those memories. I have so many games saved on VHS, Kevin. Like,
that's awesome.
Literally for my summers, I would just put tapes in and just enjoy it.
All right, I got a quick Frank story for you. So I'm moving out of my apartment. I just got married, and so I'm moving into my other apartment, my first apartment with my wife. So this is 04. No, it's 2003. Sorry, 2003. And
so the year after Self was leaving, and then we hired Bruce Weber. Right?
Yeah, so it's like June. It's like May 31st. It's like I got married May 31st of 03, so it's right around there.
Yep.
And so I'm moving all my stuff. I had a place at Colorado and Philo in Urbana. And as I'm moving my stuff, I see 2 dudes over in the corner, like trying to break into a car. And, I got all my hangers I'm taking out and loading them into my truck. And one of the dudes says, "Hey, man, you got one of them hangers? Like, we locked our keys in the car." I was like, "Oh, all right." And I walk over, and it's Jarence and Frank. and the license plate says J Howe 25 on it. And it was just kind of fun. I was like, at first I was like, "Oh, wait, it is. Jarence, that is your car. All right, yeah, cool. I'll get you a hanger or whatever." And talked to him a little bit, and I told Jarence Howard, I was like, hey, stay healthy, like have a good year, and I told Frank, stay healthy. And Frank's like, "Man, I finna murder some, Yeah. It was just funny. He was a G, dude. Like Frank was a G. Like he couldn't help it, dude. Like
Like the fact to see him sit in front row with DeMonte yesterday was just
it was cool.
Yeah, because he wasn't able to come to some of his, senior night and all that stuff when he was at Illinois. So, and you could tell that really choked Bill Self up if you look at the press conference, because he said, if Bill Self tells you you're a bad man, like he did the press conference, Frank was a bad boy. If he says that about you, and he's coached some of the greatest players ever, like maybe not ever, but some of the greatest college players.
Coach Joel Embiid.
Yep, some great players. But can you guys talk about players Bill Self had coming to Illinois? And Charlie Villanueva, Matt McCumber talked about that to a degree. He was there on his official visit. We think Charlie probably would have came to Illinois.
Charlie was coming. Yeah, Charlie, that was a done deal. Charlie was committed.
Wasn't Sharon Collins another one?
Sharon Collins, Julian Wright, like a lot of guys that we got away that probably would have come to Illinois had Bill stayed. Like, dude, I'm telling you, like you guys, Bill Self will make you feel like you're the most important person in the room when you talk to him for 30 seconds, and you're like, dude, you're Bill Self. How do you do that? He's incredible. Like he has got an incredible, charismatic way about him.
Frank should be in the Illinois Basketball Hall of Fame. I'm just going to put it there.
Is he not yet?
No, he's not.
Does he qualify?
I don't know.
Big Ten Player of the Year?
Big Ten Player of the Year. I should. And that what it is true, his final year at Illinois, it's so crazy to be like his level dropped a little bit in his final year. Where, by the way, he still was a first-round draft pick. He was the 30th pick in the 2003 NBA draft, but he was the Player of the Year in 2001. But still, when you go and average like 15 and 8 assists, and like 3 rebounds, and that's a drop off, so with that, he should be in the Hall of Fame, I think. I think Corey Bradford for holding the record as long as he did. Like, I think that holds something. Doesn't he have at most 3-pointers in Illinois history, right? Like,
he might, yeah.
Yeah. So there was just so many great players, man, and just some fun guys. Like Damir Kupalya was one I loved.
That was my dude, man. That was my favorite. He was my favorite. If he didn't get injured, he was so athletic, dude.
Yeah, like he just seemed to always make the right play. And he would always, I was like, yes, shoot the ball. Like him and Damir and Lucas Johnson were actually pretty decent 3-point shooters.
And tough, dude. That team was tough, man.
Oh my goodness. I think, by the way, they're still calling fouls on us.
On the Arizona game, yeah.
Alamo Dome. Yeah. So those are some of my favorite childhood memories. And then we transitioned to the Weber years, which there were some good ones. But man, to me though, that was my sweet spot from 98. And that was just everybody's, from my time I was 11 to like 20, it was that Kruger to win. We got to the Final Four in the national championship game was, what just had me hooked and ready to roll with it. So, but here we are, and Brad Underwood's got the team 2 Big Ten titles, in 3 years, and I think this team can compete for one this year. So I really do. I think this team is, Andy Katz is like this team's
Final Four dark horse.
Final Four dark horse, and they have so much depth. And I say this. I know Purdue's going to be tough. You saw them give Arkansas a great game in Fayetteville, and Michigan State and Tennessee battled. But I can tell you, Illinois has got such a tough non-conference schedule. You get Marquette, then you get FAU, you got Tennessee on the road who look tough, and then you get Missouri who's going to be tough. And heck, they have to go at Rutgers in early December. So Illinois has got a tough first 14, 15 games of the season. I think they'll be ready for the Big Ten schedule. I think St. Dominic blames Ron Gunther for Bill Self leaving. I know there's a lot of dislike and hate for Ron Gunther and all that stuff. But yeah, so anybody else have any memories or things you want to discuss before we get off here? You have anything?
You're right. Bradford still holds a record. He had 28 more than D. So he had 327. D had 299.
Okay. And I really would want to get Corey on here. I've actually kept up with him off and on Facebook over the years, kind of like you did with Aaron Henry. I've just told him, and I've just loved the man since he hit that.
He's first class, dude. He's first class.
He hit that 3 in the corner against Bobby Knight's Indiana team in the Big Ten tournament. Remember 99, 2000? Get him out of there. I was like, man, I love this guy. But yeah, so let's transition here to Illinois football. They're 3-5 coming out of the bye week. I watched Minnesota last week against Michigan State. Pretty typical Big Ten West team. They don't have a quarterback that's really going to beat you deep. He's like a game manager. He can run some, but he doesn't really want to. They just have a plethora of running backs that tend to show up every week.
Yeah, they were without their leading rusher last week, the freshman Taylor.
Darius Taylor. Yeah.
Darius Taylor. I don't know if he'll be back this week, but it certainly didn't matter because Nubin stepped up. Or was it Nubin? Yeah,
it was Jordan Nubin. Yeah, so
40 carries for 204 yards.
Tyler Nubin's little brother, Tyler Nubin, who's like the best safety in the. But Nubin and DeJean are going to be first team All Big Ten, but Nubin's I think a 3rd round pick probably. He's
I love that guy. Player. He kept Chase Brown from rushing for 200 yards last year. I mean, he made so many tackles in the open field where it was just him and Chase, and I'm like, he was the only dude in the league that was making those tackles, and he's really tough. This game's really going to come down to this. Like, they can't pass. Like, they can't pass, and I think they're a worse passing offense than Nebraska right now. And granted, Nebraska threw the ball at times fairly well against us. He is a dunker. I could call it phthiritis or whatever. It's like some kind of venereal disease last name.
Yeah, it's Callie McManus.
Kyle McManus, yeah. You don't want to catch that on a
No.
weekend trip to Panama.
No.
He averages a full yard lower per pass attempt than Altmaier, and we've all known that the Illinois' offense is not really vertical. We don't do that much. He doesn't run much.
He's not even. He's nowhere close to the running back that Harburg is from Nebraska either.
Right, and they don't get to the quarterback much either from a defensive standpoint, because we've been sacked 31 times. That's a really, really high number. So I'm thinking about this game is that Illinois is going to have to find Minnesota's got a good, tough defense. They really do. They can be had a little bit in the pass. They're going to really stop the run. If Illinois can slow down their running game, if Illinois can figure out a way to slow down the running game, we may have a shot here. And that's what's really going to come down to. We just gotta Keith Randolph sounds like he's going to be back. That'll be huge for that. We're obviously going to miss 4 in the first half.
He's going to be fired up though in that second half.
He is going to be fired up in the second half, and I'd really like us to have a lead. I mean that's going to be critical for this one. If we can be 10-7, 14-10, 7-3, something like that, we can have the lead at halftime. We're going to have a chance in this game because we'll get 4 back. I think they'll fire up the whole team. I think he was going to fire up the whole team anyway. Great, like you said, coming off a bye. I think Illinois could put something together from an offensive standpoint to maybe sustain some drives and keep our defense off the field, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to keep the defense off the field so they can stop the run, and they're going to stop the run by being fresh. And it's age-old. I mean, you've heard 100,000 people say this about a football game, but that's really what this one is going to come down to. This is old-school football.
Yeah, and one thing about Fleck is what you see is what you get. If you watch a Minnesota game, there's not much trickeration. They like to pound the ball. They do a little play action, stuff that Illinois likes, stuff that Brett Bielema would like to do if he had an offensive coordinator that would call the game probably how he ideally would want. A Paul Chryst type of game. You think, oh, it's 2nd and 5. They're going to probably try to pass. No, they'll keep running the ball. And they're okay setting up 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, and then they may throw the ball. They still may run the ball, So that's where these type of games and matchups, I like the Illinois. I like their defense with this type of scenario. But, again, this team's feeling really good. They got that big win against Iowa that I think, man, could you see where Illinois is right now if they held on against Wisconsin? This would be a 4-4, 5-3 for this game is for first place, in the Big Ten West. If Illinois holds on to that, I think they would, if Illinois would beat Minnesota anyway. But but yeah, they're flying high right now. I think that could come into Illinois' advantage too. They're feeling really good about themselves. Yeah, Illinois got a real chip on their shoulder and knows, there's 2 games that they should have had and they let slip away. I think they definitely feel jaded as well. I know Brett Bielema feels extremely jaded from the Newton situation to the player number situation from Wisconsin's. Yeah. Their lineman who caught the touchdown was actually wearing 66 in warmups. And the correct thing to do, the way there's protocols, I guess, that the teams have always abided by. Apparently, it's not a rule that
right. It's a gentleman's rule, right?
Yeah, it's a gentleman's rule that even if. But at the end of the day, this is big boy football, and if you get an advantage anywhere you can, you're going to try to take advantage of it. And Brett Bielema found out that Luke Fickell will one-up his ass if he feels like he needs to. So hopefully I think that's fired up Brett a lot too. And another thing, Brett Bielema's never lost to PJ Fleck.
There you go. And the weather's going to work out for us. I was just looking that up. The weather's going to be looks like it's going to be partly cloudy, partly sunny, whatever side of that you want to look at. Kickoff is probably going to be low 40s, high 30s, get down to low 30s by the end of the game, but light wind, no snow in the forecast right now. That's going to matter for this. That's good. That's better for us. That's better for the team that can throw the ball, right? Yeah, because we don't want if they're going to force us into being super one-dimensional on offense, that's going to hurt. So.
They have one threat that his name's Daniel Jackson, and Kelly McManus literally went to him 12 times against Michigan State, and they just couldn't stop him.
Yeah, they don't spread the ball out at all.
Yeah, they don't. He looks for one guy. So I can tell you this: Aaron Henry, you're going to see Brett Bielema and them have a plan. Like make him find someone else. And they do have Brevin Spann, who, man, if you
Big
had
tight end.
somebody like
Big
a
tight
big,
end.
huge guy, you'd think who was like a Jimmy Graham type.
He's
He's
huge. Yeah.
huge, like an athlete, a guy who could play basketball, but he's had some mental blocks. He's had some big drops. So that's a guy, that's a weapon that they love to use in the red zone. He just hasn't been there. And honestly, Minnesota struggles in the red zone. They kick field goals at a high rate. So Illinois should be able to stay in this game enough. If they're giving up touchdowns in Minnesota, there's problems because Minnesota struggles unless they're hitting one from like 30 yards. But other than that, Kev, we'll go ahead and before we give our predictions for this game, so let's hold on to those for a minute. Let's go ahead and give some love where it's due. And Shauna Green deserves better than sometimes the attendance gives her. But how about those Illini women's basketball? 121 points tonight. Number 123rd ranked. No, 23rd ranked Illini. I know is an exhibition, but they've got so many good transfers. I think the team, like I said, I think they can fight for a top 16 ranking and a 4 seed in the tournament to get themselves a home games there in Champaign.
Yeah, it's really impressive the turnaround. We talked about it a little bit on the show last year. The one thing that I'll say is they play, and I'll just frankly say it, dude. I don't care. I don't care for watching women's basketball. I'll watch women's volleyball, I'll watch women's softball, I'll watch women's golf. Like women's basketball doesn't do much for me. They play a really entertaining style of basketball. They move the ball, they cut, they got girls who can make shots, they got some, good athletic players. The one aspect I'm a little bit worried about of this butt whooping we handed out today is Cook didn't play much. I don't think she played at all in the second half. She got a little bit of an injury concern, so let's just hope, knock on wood, she's okay. I haven't looked at their schedule. I'm really hoping that I know one of the things they did last year is like we had a great non-conference record. We had a great overall record. And then we still ended up being a pretty low seed because we didn't put a lot of teams on the schedule. So I'm hoping maybe that they fix that. I'm not sure who they play on the schedule. It's worth a darn. I do know they got Notre Dame.
I know they have Notre Dame and they play Missouri too.
Marquette. I don't know. Is Missouri any good? Notre Dame's typically pretty good in women's basketball.
Yeah, Missouri's a bubble team last year. I think they snuck in. So I mean, it's not a non-quality game.
Well, I hate their women's teams too, so that sucks.
Yeah. Don't be surprised if Illinois finishes right behind. Yeah, you know what? Maryland lost some really, really good players, Diamond Jackson and some other girls that went to the WNBA. Ohio State lost some really good players too. Illinois didn't lose anybody, and I think Illinois had Ohio State beat last year.
They did.
They beat Iowa.
Had Indiana they beat Indiana, right?
Yep. They had Indiana on the ropes and should have beat them in Bloomington. They came back and kicked their butt and
beat Iowa.
Yeah, and they beat Iowa. I'm just telling you. They have Illinois picked 6th, but that's because the first top 5 teams are all in the top 20, and Illinois is 6th and they're 23rd. So I think definitely the best Big Ten basketball, women's basketball is in the Big Ten. So with that said, looking forward to her season, and I do plan to go to at least one of those games this year, but I'm hoping more fans show up to support those women if they're able to do that, no doubt. Now, go to our predictions. This is the last thing as we get to our final thought, Kev. I'll start with you. Where do you see Illinois, Minnesota this weekend? Don't even know the line. Have you seen the line?
Yeah, Minnesota +2 over under 40. Minnesota -2, and it opened a little bit bigger than that. I think it opened 3.5, 4.5, something like that. So it sounds like the money's going on Illinois. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, it's all variable. It's always 55-45 in gambling anyway. And the over/under of 42. I like this game. 2017 Illinois. I'm a pick with my heart a little bit here. I think Illinois could find a way to pull this off. So I think the bye week is going to work out well for us.
I'm right there with you. I'm gonna say 21-14. I think they'll win. You know what? 21-17. I like that. I think They have such a good kicker, Minnesota. They're going to get one, if not more than one. They may go for two. They might hit
Make
two
it
field goals.
21-16 and let them get 3. That's fine by me as long as we win the dang game.
Yeah. I just know that they're going to kick one field goal. I mean, every game they have a field goal. They got a really good kicker. He basically beat Iowa single-handedly. So I got Illinois winning a close one. I think it's definitely going to be close. If Illinois loses this one, season's still not over. They got Indiana the next week at 11 a.m. on Big Ten Network for Dad's Day. And then that's going to set up, the rivalry game with Iowa, who you're always going to be in that game because they just physically can't score offensively. So, unless you beat yourself, you have a good chance to beat Iowa, and that's just kind of how it is. Brian Ferentz got the bye today. He got the boot. That
not till the end of the year, though.
Yeah, but he still got the boot. I mean, come on now. That hurts.
Not till the end of the year.
He's going to – but my point is this. That's like Kevin, me saying this to you. Hey, we're going to keep you around, Kevin. We love what you do, but we're going to have to let you go after the holidays. You're still going to – you think you're going to sit there and be like, I'm going to give it my all. I'm in my best spirits. I love it. You're going to be irritated, So you're going to have an irritated Brian Ferentz that really – what does he have to prove? I mean, they basically said you're not good enough, and he knows this offense is going to miraculously be better. So to me, that's actually going to help teams against Iowa. What's he going to do? Is he just going to coach better now that he's been let go to a degree at the end of the year? If anything, I think negativity will creep in. So I think they should have just waited till the end of the year, honestly. But so with that, Kev, final thoughts, anything as we head towards the start of the hoop season and winding down football season?
Yeah, there was some really good things that happened in this NFL weekend. Sidney Brown just laid a devastating hit on Terry McLaurin. It was great to see his highlight flowing through the Twitterverse. Kirby Joseph got a nice pick tonight. Nate Hobbs is back. I'm glad to see that guy. He's always been one of my faves. So it's just really, I'm just going to share that it's really nice to watch Illinois football, watch NFL football on Sundays and see Illinois guys out there making some plays. Those of us wanting to see some offensive guys saw probably a guy we didn't expect. I don't think anybody would have had money that Tommy DeVito would have got a rushing touchdown before Chase Brown in the NFL, but he did. Chase Brown's on IR, just so 4-week deal with his hamstring. So it's just fun, just enjoying to watch NFL football on Sundays because it gets a little bit more.
So many Illini, I know, my goodness.
And we're probably going to have a top 10 draft pick. I saw some more mocks that love Johnny in the top 10, so that's awesome.
And then Isaiah Adams is going to be in the top third round, probably maybe at least by third, fourth. But yeah, so love that. I'll piggyback on that to a degree. Getting to see our Illini playing on Sundays, and you can't ever take that for granted. Devin Witherspoon, I think, is a whole lot better than any of us ever thought.
How could I leave Spoon out of the conversation?
Yeah.
Got better stats than Sauce Gardner did at this point in time.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, is that, look at those numbers and compare. And then Tommy DeVito, first Illini to actually play in an NFL game as a quarterback since Kurt Kittner 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those things are going to be changing for sure, I think, as things go on. Not sure Luke Altmaier will be there, but you never know. So
he's got all the abilities. He's going to make it happen. So.
Yeah. With that said, though, we got a big Fade the Deuce coming up in a couple nights. How'd you do last week, real quick, Kev?
I think it was 50-50 last week. I was 3-3, I think.
Yeah, so. And a lot of that was put together, with glue and some just luck and hope, because you were on a trip. I mean, I can't blame you for that.
Nah, man, it's okay.
Hey, real quick before we get off here, not too late to get your Keepin It Orange and Blue, T-shirt available. Get a hold of Scott, hometownhypeapparel.com, and if you use a cellular phone or a home phone, landline, it'll work. 217-278-0120. Hometown Hype Apparel. Get your swag right. If you're listening to Keeping It Orange and Blue, that'll do it. Swap me out.
ILL.
INL.